Manoa may soon have a name change. The student organization at UH says Porteus Hall should not bear the name of the scholar Stanley David Porteus. They believe the now deceased professor expressed racist philosophies.
The building was named amidst a lot of protests in 1974. When they finally did get them to discuss it, the Board of Regents were really clear that they weren't going to discuss changing the name. They were just going to sit and listen.
Defenders of Professor Porteus says he was not a racist and that anyone who read his book, the entire book in 1926, Temperament and Race, will see that.
Sciences building, and this isn't the first time. Today, banners and life-size rag dolls hung from the Stanley D. Porteus building. The stuffed dolls represented women and various minorities that Porteus described in his work as being inferior to white males. Porteus was an internationally renowned psychology professor at UH from 1922 to 1948. He authored about 100 books and theorized that intelligence was largely based on genetics and race.
He stated that he could prove through his work that everyone was inferior to white people and women were inferior to men. That's a dangerous symbol to put on a building of higher education.
Calling Porteus a racist, the Associated Students at UH is spearheading an effort to rename the building. They will make their case to the Board of Regents next month. Despite early opposition, the Regents upheld the name when the building was still new in 1975. The president of UH says he believes the current student proposal should be handled as expeditiously as possible. President Mortimer is soliciting information and comments from interested parties through the end of the month. Ironically, the Porteus building is home to the Office of Women's Research and the Peace Institute at the University of
Hawaii. Students and faculty renew a protest started in the 1970s. Have renewed a 25-year-old debate over the name of the school's social sciences building. Porteus Hall is named after a former UH psychology professor, but critics say his works smack of racism. Nelson Duranshong reports.
About 40 university students and faculty chanted their demands in front of the building whose name they find offensive. Porteus Hall is home to the school's anthropology, political science, psychology, and women's studies departments. The building is named after Stanley Porteus, who was on the UH faculty from 1922 to 1949. In a book entitled Temperament and Race, Porteus detailed studies that he claimed proved the superiority of whites over other races in Hawaii. In another publication, he proclaimed the superiority of men over women. The criticism stems from Porteus's writings from 1965 and earlier. The university's Board of Regents named the building after him in 1974. That's before most of today's students were even born. And while the issue caused a big stir on campus in the early 70s, when asked, many of today's students were not aware of that controversy. Vicky, you've heard of Porteus Hall?
My counselor used to go there for, they have academic advising on the bottom, but that's all I know about it.
I am finding that a lot of students didn't know, and some of the messages that have been coming to me is, well, it didn't hurt us, but in fact it does, because if in fact racism exists on this campus, and this is just a blatant example of it.
Kim also points to the fact that although whites make up only 15% of the student population, they comprise 70% of the faculty and administration. Nelson Duranshong, Channel 2 News, University of Hawaii-Manoa.
The university's undergraduate student government has petitioned the Board of Regents to change the name of the building. However, it has yet to be placed on the Regents' agenda. Social Sciences building on the University of Hawaii campus will officially come to an end tomorrow. The Board of Regents is expected to approve the recommendations of a board committee to rename Porteus Hall. As Norman Lee reports, the issue has stirred deep emotions among students and faculty.
I should like to recommend that the Board of Regents rename the Stanley David Porteus Hall on the University of Hawaii at Manoa campus.
Those who support the renaming of Porteus Hall received a huge boost at the start of the Board of Regents committee meeting when Interim Executive Vice Chancellor Dean Smith decided to back their cause. Porteus Hall is named after former UH faculty member Stanley Porteus, who authored several publications, including the book Temperament and Race. His conclusions of white superiority in Hawaii sparked a student movement to rename the building.
I want to ask the university this question: does it represent Porteus' ideals? Does it represent his books and the beliefs that he had about colored people on this campus? Because most of us and most of the students are people of color. So that you guys do rename this building.
Do I consider Dr. Porteus a racist? No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. He worked in his time, in the context of his times. Just that that concept has not stood the test of time itself.
However, Jack Hogue, who also served on the board when the building was named after Porteus in 1974, issued an ominous warning.
Do we now go back in time and investigate all our campus buildings, or just the ones that have evoked the latest wave of sentiment by the campus students and activists?
For example, Hogue said since Thomas Jefferson was known to be a slave owner, will Jefferson Hall at the East-West Center be next for a name review? He also said revelations about President John F. Kennedy's personal life could also merit a name change for Kennedy Theater.
Be wary of this decision. It sets the university on an uncharted course. I pray we will do the right thing. Thank you.
In the end, the vote was unanimous.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carried. We will recommend to the full board tomorrow that we rename the Porteus Hall.
Thank you.
Once the full board approves the idea, the building will simply be known as the Social Sciences Building. Norman Lee, Channel 10 News.
UH Student Body President Mamo Kim said the Board of Regents should consider renaming the Porteus building after a native Hawaiian such as Queen Liliuokalani.